Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today at Los Angeles Norml. So we have a very exciting show for you today. But before we get started, I'd like to recognize the team here at Los Angeles Norml that's responsible for everything that we do. As well, I'd like to remind you that Los Angeles Norml is an all-volunteer organization, so it's important to remember that these people are all volunteering their time to push forward with the much-needed reform to our cannabis laws in Los Angeles. They are here working for our community, so we really appreciate your support. So let me introduce the team. Bruce Margolin is our Director Emeritus and founded Los Angeles Norml in 1973. Just think about that for a minute, making us one of the oldest chapters in the country, and we're really so proud of that distinction. Nicholas Castelli is our Director of Communications to make sure our communications are on point and on brand. Elisabeth Mack, a registered nurse, is our Director of Health and Wellness and provides her expertise on the medical benefits of cannabis. Sharon Sperber is our Director of Memberships, and she's responsible for our growth within the community. Hirsch Jane is our Director of Government Affairs and provides his in-depth knowledge on cannabis policy and legislation at the local, state, and federal level. Brett Maccomer is our Director of Technology, who keeps the lights on and leads our technology team to ensure that we have all of the necessary tools at our disposal to continue providing the education that we do. And my name's Ian Rassman. I'm your Executive Director here at LA Norml, and I'm also your very, very grateful host for today. And really thank you so much for being here. So let me tell you a little bit about what we have going on today. So if you didn't know, September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and I can honestly think of no better guest to educate us on childhood cancer than the mother of one of my daughter's best friends, Sophie. Sophie's mom, Tracy Ryan, is the founder of CannaKids and its new and only product line, CK Soul, which is a California-based wellness brand with a focus on supplying premium, safe, and expertly prepared whole plant cannabis products to Californians of all ages. Today, we are also honored to be interviewing Cheryl Branch from the Green Believers, a social equity business center here in Los Angeles. As we all know, LA is one of the largest cannabis-friendly cities on the planet, and we are also well known to have one of the most ethnically diverse cities around the globe. Now, looking back at Los Angeles over the last several decades, we know that our city was disproportionately targeted during the war on drugs, and many of our fathers, brothers, mothers, sons, and daughters were locked up for minor cannabis possession charges. Now that we've arrived in the year 2020, we can see that Los Angeles has a very large role in California's cannabis market, which is arguably the largest cannabis market on the planet. So now that we have licensed cannabis money flowing through our streets, we must ask ourselves, what has been done and what are we continuing to do to ensure that those individuals who paid the highest price during the war on drugs now have an opportunity to participate in our regulated cannabis market? So we're very excited to have both of our guests here with us today, and we're going to close out the meeting today with some questions and answer time from our audience for our guests, so please be ready with your questions. So before we begin today's show, I'd like to actually talk to you for a moment about Norml's Smoke the Vote campaign. I think we all know that the upcoming election in November is going to be historic. So it's important to know where the potential candidates that you may be voting for, where they stand on the various cannabis issues. So briefly, Smoke the Vote is an educational campaign to let the public know who's going to be on your ballot in November and what their position has been on cannabis issues. So Norml has compiled data on these candidates that includes their current position on cannabis legislation and whether or not they have co-sponsored any cannabis legislation. It's going to show their past voting record on cannabis legislation and as well any public comments that they have made about cannabis. It's very interesting. So as well as the candidates that are going to be on the ballot in November, Smoke the Vote has also compiled the same data for the people who currently represent you today, even though they may not be on November's ballot. So let's jump right into it. So Norml Smoke the Vote. Number one, the website, vote.norml.org. So you can easily just click on any one of the states right here. Let me go full screen, make sure you can all see this. All right, so you can just click on any one of these states here and get general state information, or you can enter in your zip code. You can see I've already put mine in the past. So let's take a look at who's on my ballot coming up in November. I live in Marina Del Rey, so these may be some of my particular candidates that are running just in my local area, but it also includes the county and the state and at the federal level as well. So here we go. Races currently on my ballot. So in the race for president, we have, and by the way, everybody gets a score of A, B, C, D, or F, okay? Just like grade school, A is good, and so on. So let's just jump right into here. Let's just pick somebody right at the top, Kamala Harris, since she's clearly at front and center. So Kamala Harris gets an A on Smoke the Vote. Why? Well, she has co-sponsored legislation, and you can see here that she has co-sponsored each one of these 5 acts. So that's very good from her. As well, you can see what comments she's made. So like, here's a good one. Let me tell you what California needs, Jeff Sessions. We need support in dealing with transnational criminal organizations and dealing with human trafficking, not in going after grandma's medicinal marijuana, she said, referring to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So this is basically Kamala Harris's position on cannabis. And let me go back out. We can see Joe Biden, of course, he gets a B-. So, I mean, it's okay, but he can really step up his game, and we're hoping that Kamala Harris is able to bring that to his administration if he's the one that ends up being successful in November. So here is Joe's information. So he gets a B-. So he has supported a lot of anti-drug policies, imposing punitive penalties. He's made a number of comments here. He said it's a gateway drug. So we don't really like that about his statement there. So, and that was only, and then in March of this year, he reversed course on that gateway drug and said that he doesn't think that it is. So anyway, you know, you can see here that Smoke the Vote really kind of goes into some details on what each of these representatives are. So we have this gentleman here, supported decriminalization and possession. He gets a C. These particular people here, including Mike Pence and Donald Trump, we don't actually have a lot of data on what their positions are. So if you know something about Donald Trump's position, you can come to the website and tell us what you know, and it'll be curated into the information that's being displayed here. So for the House of Representatives, we have Karen Bass running, and she gets a B. Sydney over here at the State Assembly District 54 gets an A. Our governor, Gavin Newsom, gets a B. Let's click into him for a minute. So he did enact legislation. He has vetoed some legislation, and he's made a number of comments in here. So you can come take a look at all of this, various legislative acts that he's voted on. Dianne Feinstein here in California. She's long opposed legal marijuana and advocated for stricter drug enforcement. And then this year she reversed her position announcing support for marijuana reform. So through her mixed history, she gets a C, but clearly she's made some big improvements there. Yeah, so this is largely Smoke the Vote. I'd really like to encourage you to all go out and look up Smoke the Vote, look up your representatives, know who's out there to represent you, and remember that information when you go to the ballot or when you're preparing your mail-in ballot. Let's see, we stop the screen share now. Okay. Fantastic. All right, so I'd now like to turn the stage over to Elisabeth Mack, our Director of Health and Wellness, who will introduce our first guest. Elisabeth, take it away.
Hello, Ian, and hello, everybody. I'm definitely going to be looking up Donald Trump's record on cannabis, although I don't think it's all that good. All right, so I am thrilled and honored to introduce you to today's guest speaker, Tracy Ryans. Been a good friend of mine. We figured out since the beginning of 2016. So since her infant daughter's brain tumor diagnosis in June of 2013, Tracy has dedicated a huge part of her life to educating herself on the medicinal powers of medical marijuana in treating her own daughter's disease. She is now partnered with world-renowned cancer immunology research scientist Anahid Jewett. Together, they have conducted groundbreaking research on her daughter's tumor, along with 16 other cancer patients that Tracy and her team followed that were using her brand of Canna-Kids oils. Pardon the motorcycles. So with no further ado, let me bring on Tracy and start this chat here.
Hi, Tracy. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And so let's just start with number one. Like, how is Sophie doing? And tell me about her remarkable 8-year journey.
Oh my gosh, she's doing so good right now, which is crazy because she just endured 6 years of nonstop chemotherapy and clinical trial drugs, 2 brain surgeries, vision loss, one issue after another. And to meet this child, you would never know she's gone through anything. She's put on all kinds of weight. Her hair's super long. She had her port removed recently, which she's had in her chest since she was 9 months old. So that was a huge milestone for us. And she has now been stable. Her tumor never goes away. It's a low grade, grade 1. Chemo doesn't get rid of these. So the goal is always to stabilize these tumors. And her tumor's now been stable for almost a full year. She's gotten way more of her vision back, which the doctors are calling absolutely miraculous. They're saying they've never seen vision recover this much in their entire careers. The female doctor that we just saw recently actually said it while I was videotaping her, because I love getting that stuff on camera. And we're just so grateful to be stuck at home, but healthy stuck at home.
Well, it's just so just invigorating to hear about success stories. And what are the doctors' perceptions of the cannabis being side by side all these years with the things that they're doing?
It's been really exciting with our journey specifically, because I know so many parents out there have had such a difficult time working with doctors in hospitals and getting pushback from using medical cannabis on their children. But it's been the exact opposite from us. Since Sophie was 9 months old, her oncology team, which started at Kaiser, she's now at Children's Hospital LA, they supported us from the very beginning. We wouldn't have given her the medication if they hadn't have, but we brought them all kinds of research. And of course, Ricky Lake was on board at that point. She was shooting the documentary Weed the People that's now on Netflix. We, name dropped her, of course, and gave them all the information that she had shared with us. And the journey began. And the amount of shrinkage we saw in a tumor that usually traditionally doesn't really shrink that well with chemo, because the cells divide very slowly and chemo only gobbles up dividing cells. That's why in cancers 2 through 4, they go away, but stage 1, they don't. And then the immunological response, watching her immune system and the way that it responded, like the first 9 months or first 13 months of treatment, she needed 9 blood transfusions. And then 4 months before treatment was over, she just stopped needing them, which was medically impossible, according to all of her doctors. And they gave the credit to cannabis. Then you jump to the surgeries that she's had. The most recent brain surgery was 2 years ago, which led us to our cancer research and allowed me to get her live brain tissue into humanized mice. But from that surgery, which was a 7-hour surgery, she came out. She had no swelling, no bruising, was released from the hospital in less than 48 hours when she should have been there for 3 to 5 days, and was told she could go back to school in 1 to 2 days when it should have been 1 to 2 weeks. And they said they'd never seen anything like it in the history of the hospital. So every doctor, from oncology to neurology to every physician and nurse that she has seen since, have all said the same thing. Don't stop what you're doing. Keep her on the cannabis. And they've been charting it since she was 9 months old.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And when you began all of this, you didn't have Canna-Kids and then CK Soul, so that the origination of a brand and a company, it started out to really serve the needs of pediatric cancer, other like-minded children like your own. What was the and still to this day, what is it like to tell parents cannabis oil is safe for their kids? How do you have that conversation?
It's a lot easier today than it was 7 years ago when Sanjay Gupta hadn't even come out about it yet. But today, because there's so much information out there, usually when parents get to us, they've already learned about us through a friend or online or through a film or through some sort of media coverage that we've gotten, because we still get a lot of media coverage about this stuff. We were just in Daily Mail and on KTLA this week with Vernon Davis from Dancing with the Stars, who's now supporting us. So, by the time they get to me, they're so excited to have something that they have learned it can be used in a non-toxic way. Because if you dose cannabis properly and you start slow and you titrate up you start really low on the dose and you titrate up very slowly, you can mitigate all the psychoactivity. So to understand that, and then for us to tell them about the research that we're doing at UCLA, I'm a patent holder now. I'm a co-inventor with Dr. Jewett and UCLA, which is crazy because I haven't had a science class since high school. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's a much easier conversation because we now have proven in our science on the 17 patients that we studied, Sophie being one of them, and in our humanized mouse models, that cannabis is not only helping fix the immune system, but it's completely turning the natural killer cells back on, which my scientist in 30 years has discovered is the reason we get cancer in the first place. It's the failure of this system. And it's targeting and killing cancer stem cells, which are the seeds to cancer, which chemo and radiation can't even do. So when parents find me and they hear this information and they learn that we just published to the journals, it'll be hitting the journals here in the next few months, they really, really get excited. And there's nothing better than to be able to give a parent that has, that is being hit with this kind of information, or even an adult that's going through it, or a caregiver of any kind. There's nothing like being able to share something that we truly believe can be extremely beneficial to them and their loved ones.
Wow. It's amazing. And as we know, children have an immature endocannabinoid system, so they don't necessarily process THC as we do in the psychoactive effects of it. So tell me, with Canna Kids to CK Soul to now Encore and Encore, I love the play on words, and taking NK for natural killer cells. Tell me about this new company and some of the research you're doing up at UCLA.
Absolutely. Well, with Canna Kids and the transition to CK Soul, with legalization, we ended up really having a hard time with the name. Now, the governmental body, the BCC, sent us to the health department and all the other governing bodies, and they all approved the use of the Canna Kids name because we were marketing to the parents of children and not children themselves, and none of our packaging looks pediatric. But the dispensaries were having a really hard time taking in anything that had kids in it because the rules were so strict. And then you cut to the taxation, and you've got a lot of these families already so poor from the extreme medical bills and loss of work that they endure. They can't afford the taxation. So a lot of these families, I'm sure at this point, are now having to go to the black market just to save the 30 to 35%, sometimes higher, in taxes, which is still to me baffling that we're paying that. So we really had to make a pivot with that, and we decided to do something that was a play on Canna Kids. So CK stands for Canna Kids, and Soul from seed to soul, because this is really our soul's journey, our soul's purpose that we believe. And we really wanted to open it up to a wider audience and have a health and wellness play on it so that we could cast a much wider net and help a lot more people. Now, transitioning to Encore came about because I can't actually own equity in a cannabis company and work with the FDA and own an immunotherapy company. And it was always really challenging working with UCLA in regards to this. So if I raise money through Saving Sophie, but it came from a cannabis brand, UCLA can't accept that money because of the rules that they have on campus. So it was not only a challenge with UCLA, but with the FDA, we can't submit our fast tracks for any of our therapeutics that we're developing if I'm a shareholder in a company that's receiving federally illegal funds. So I have remained on with CK Soul, formerly Canna Kids, as the spokesperson. I'm still supporting the brand every day. All the formulas are still the formulas that we created and developed. And that allows me then to launch this immunotherapy company where I can cast a wider net globally with a therapeutic that becomes FDA approved that is then covered by insurance. So Canna Kids and CK Soul has really helped me take this next step, and they've all been super supportive in my journey moving forward, because anything that's going to benefit the world, I mean, that's what we're all here for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your new website is amazing. Please say it for everybody and sign up for the emails as well.
My new website is Encore.com, Nkore.com, because natural killer cells are the core to wellness.
Yeah, it's an amazing research portal. I expect to see more white papers published through those links,
yes.
And to stay abreast of everything else that you're working on. And as we come to the end of this show, I would like to see Sophie. So if she's off the phone by the time we close up,
okay.
Then we'll grab her.
All right, perfect.
Okay. Well, any other closing thoughts on the medicalization of cannabis and anything else we can do to help you?
There is one final thing that I want to just mention about COVID. My scientist has now published 2 articles, actually 3 articles now this year, just on COVID. And what we're finding is that COVID is attacking the natural killer cells. And a lot of these people that you're seeing, well, basically all the people that you're seeing succumb to the disease are ones that already have a fractured NK cell system. And COVID is going in and destroying the rest of them, therefore debilitating their immune system so they can't recover. We have proven without a shadow of a doubt that cannabis is turning the natural killer cells back on. So not only is there research coming out of Canada showing that cannabis can be an incredible therapeutic to fight COVID and reduce your symptoms by 78 to 80%, but we concur with that because of our research that we've seen and how it supports the immune function. So take your oils, stay away from sugar, and take your cannabis every day. It's an incredible anti-inflammatory and a cancer preventative and all of those wonderful things that we've all learned over the years cannabis can do.
Yeah. On top of keeping us all calm and balanced and a little more grounded.
Yes, it's the only reason I can sleep at night.
All right, well, we'll pivot back and direct our meeting now to another guest. So I am honored to introduce our next guest speaker, who will be interviewed by Ian, Cheryl Branch. Cheryl and Ian will be discussing social equity, what that means, why it's necessary, what is currently in the works, and what more needs to be done. Cheryl is the founder of Green Believers, Everything You Need to Know About Cannabis podcast, and the Green Believers Incubator, a social equity business center for startup legal cannabis businesses. So Ian, you ready to come back in?
Yes, I am. I was just trying to figure out how to do that. Okay, cool. Thank you, Elisabeth. Cheryl, so great to see you again. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great today. Thank you so much for having me, Ian. Hi, LA Norml. Hello, Canna Kids Mom. It's so great to hear your story. Awesome story.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. I always love hearing from Tracy. You know, as I mentioned, our daughters are friends, so it's kind of cool. Tracy and I chat about some business stuff, we chat about some girl stuff, and it's definitely cool. So it was great having Tracy here today. And it's fantastic seeing you again, Cheryl, and having you coming on our show this time. So
yes,
we're excited. I think we need some education, to be honest with you, Cheryl. So could you please explain to our audience what is social equity?
Yes, and so social equity is a form of benefits with licensing. As we became legal licensed businesses in California and across the country, but I can especially talk about California. It's a particular type of benefit with your license if you were disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. So for example, if you have a cannabis conviction, if you happen to live in a low income area that had an overconcentration of poverty or high arrest records in the city of LA, these were the criteria that made you eligible for the special benefit license called a Los Angeles Social Equity License. So that provided you a license as a pre-ICO phase, or you could be provided a social equity license for what we call phase 2, which means you would have manufacturing, cultivation, distribution, and you would also get non-retail delivery and soon retail. So if the phase 2 people, in my opinion, they got a really sweet deal. And then what's coming up next, your final opportunity to receive this special benefit license would be retail. So it's designed for populations harmed by the war on drugs, which are mostly Black and brown people. We all know who we're talking about. So it was designed to try to make right from what we all know about the war on drugs, the Controlled Substances Act, the over-incarceration of Black and brown people, the disruption of any local economies that we created when they were burned and torched and things like that. This was an attempt to try to correct that. So it's been an interesting journey here in Los Angeles. I am a Black woman, but I didn't qualify for social equity as an individual. I haven't been to prison for a cannabis conviction or jail for a cannabis conviction. And I didn't have enough years in a low income neighborhood. So what we decided to do, we were a faith-based prison ministry. We've operated prison ministries in Los Angeles since 1994. And so we took that experience because when we learned from the legislation that there were going to be this little benefit package, that if you had this experience, we were like, we know who all these people are. We run the prison ministry. So we reached out to them and we started having focus groups in 2017. So we used to call it Cannabis and Christianity. Where are you at with it? And oh boy, did we have some discussions. And after that, we built some consensus. And I'll never forget, we had the meeting in Watts. We had over 300 people there. At that time, it was Council President Herb Wesson was there, Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson. We also had Councilman Curran Price. We had representatives from the newly formed DCR. And so these are the local leaders in our city, and they were all there. And one thing we noticed, our company was asked to be there. We were filming because we have a media social enterprise. And when we looked around that room, over 300 people on a Saturday afternoon, most of them were little older ladies over 55 with those little handbags like you see in, one of the famous TV shows. And those old ladies came over to me and said, you go ahead and make this happen. We want this. And I was just shocked. Like, I couldn't believe it. So I realized that our customers were not going to be the saggy jean, gangbanger, hip hop influencers. They're customers too, but primarily in this commercial cannabis, marketing plan, but that we were going to have a whole lot of older adults and people that were part of the medical community that we were not aware of, that wanted to get their cannabis safely, have it be clean, and that they knew what they were getting a hold of. They wanted information on dosing and frequency and an explanation of different kinds of strains and just all kinds of questions. And so we leaned in on that. By 2018, we formed the company, and building on our faith-based roots, we were the Green Believers. So that's how the Green Believers got born, built out of prison ministries. It's been a wonderful journey. We created the incubator. So from 2018 till now, we have helped 5 social equity companies to become permanent licensed. So we're probably a handful or less of these incubators and consultants and technical assistance companies that are really working with social equity businesses. Most of the individuals that you'll run into that are in the ancillary cannabis business are not social equity and may not have as much knowledge about social equity businesses as we would like them to have. So we kind of stepped into that gap. So we have 5 businesses and just helping them get through the series of things that they need. There's product development, there's packaging, there's distribution, there's seed to sale tracking, all of the physical build out that has to be done. The spaces we have, we may have over 50,000 square feet, under the control of these 5 companies. And they're situated on an old industrial track. So it's gigantic. I can't even tell you how gigantic. And it's very rare to find that kind of contiguous land availability in an urban infill like, South LA, but we did it. And so these are some of the things that we're doing. I think a lot of people romanticize social equity and the benefits that this program brings. And they kind of romanticize this idea of, helping the people harmed most by the war on drugs. But I think these business owners that I'm working with, these are some of the hardest working people I've ever met in my career. because they've had to overcome some incredible odds. Los Angeles, it's probably the most scandalous cannabis market that you could work in across the world. And to these business owner credit, they passed. So I think that says a lot. We're woefully undercapitalized, but they were able to acquire sites legally, get permitted, pass, many elimination rounds of site visits and examinations, as well as put together all of the back office things that need to be done. So we've got some exciting brands coming out. We're starting to diversify now. I have hemp seed oil. We have moringa being coupled up with some of our the distribution and manufacturing side of our cultivators that have licenses. So we're starting to diversify in those kinds of ways, and it's just it's really getting exciting. So can't wait. Look forward to working with you. Oh, and Norml, I love the Smoke the Vote campaign. We do a podcast, and so today we were talking to one of our growers who grows the moringa in Palm Springs, and we came up with a new product line, so we were talking about that, but I explained to them the Smoke the Vote. We went through the site like Ian just did now, and so they're doing a big push, and we're going to be getting all of our folks to jump in. I can't say how important it is that we have cannabis candidates in local, state, federal office to help us. And congratulations on your 50 years in business, representing us, speaking up for us, being a voice when we didn't know what we were doing. I don't know how I got to the end of the finish line. I had not been in a dispensary. I had never been on a cannabis farm before. And somehow here we are.
So you meant, I want to go back on something you said a minute ago. So you said that Los Angeles is so scandalous for its cannabis and social equity programs. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And as well, tell us why social equity is important and necessary here in Los Angeles.
I don't know if we have enough time for me to do that, but what I will say, social equity is important because we want opportunities for all. I think it's really that simple. There's no magic answer. We all know that what has happened in America to people of color, and especially Black people, it's been in the news more than ever before. And there were just intentional acts and decisions made by public, private companies and leaders that were intended to harm Black people, people of color, brown people, Black people, and it worked. And so we reached a point where we could try to do something to correct that, to give an opportunity to those who went to jail to now have a chance to participate in capitalism, participate in free market, as many of the whites are going to do, and as they are doing. I don't know any Black moms that could come and tell their story and make a business. That just doesn't happen. We haven't had that. I've talked to many, many moms that have children, and they just couldn't get that break. So that's why it's important, because it will help to provide some relief. It's not a magic pill. It won't reverse all the harm, but it's a beginning for our country, our city, our state, to try to make right some of the things that they got wrong. So that's what it's all about. Equity, trying to give a hand up to those who suffered the most. I have friends and family members. What got me involved was my family, my personal story. I have 2 cousins that I grew up with like brothers. I come from a family of 8. I'm the oldest of 8, and my other 2 cousins always made us 10. And both of those young men went to prison at 17. So I was devastated when they were taken away from our community. And the problem was they didn't have a way to make income. They didn't have a father and mother like we had. And they were at our house, but they couldn't always be there all the time. So things fell through the cracks. And they ended up doing 28 years in jail. And one is up to 33 years now, and he's still in prison. For cannabis and other drugs, but drugs, nothing, no homicide, no murder, nothing violent. And I guess, trafficking drugs and cannabis can be considered violent because all that comes with the territory. So I understand that. But yeah, they went to prison for that. Exactly. Can you believe that? And I have some young men on our team now because we had to merge illegal professionalism with some illegal practices to try to come up with the right formula to help an individual from this Black and brown community to matriculate into a tax-paying business. It's a process. And so I had to have a little bit of both to make it right. And so we have guys who've done close to 40 years in prison. 40 years. And so when you talk about, why is this important? America, we got to cut it out. We got to stop it. We do not need to have this type of punitive system. And we've all been getting more educated about where our policing model comes from. It's from the slave patrols. So this still goes all the way back to that ugly, ugly history we have about trafficking human beings and it being a worldwide problem. It didn't just happen in America. England was involved. The Dutch were involved. Spain was involved. Everybody was involved. Africa was involved. All of them. Yeah, we were all involved. So it's a worldwide phenomenon, and just over incarcerating people, making money off of people's misery. That's what it is. So you get what you get.
Cheryl, can you give us a positive example of an applicant that you've worked with in the social equity program that helped move that applicant forward with the stake in the industry? Well, let's hear a good story. Give us a good story.
Oh, sure. I have a great story.
I know you do.
I do. I have a couple of really good stories. So there's one lady, I don't want to give out any names yet, but there's one lady in Long Beach, and she was a mom. She didn't know anything about cannabis either, and they were operating for a pre-ICO. They were the drivers and the unskilled workers for this company. And then when everything went legal, they couldn't keep the company going. They contacted us, wanted to figure out how could they get involved. And so they did. We helped them through the city of Long Beach. They won their license. And they are in the city of Long Beach's social equity program. They won their technical assistance money. They recently got their site, and we are now actually shopping for their track and trace system. I introduced them to all the improved vendors from the BCC, and it looks like we're going to be going with Viridian Sciences. I love their package, by the way. If you're looking at which one to go with, I like them. They're a little more pricey, but you get so much more value for those few extra dollars, and the machine, the software, it's very powerful. So she's a Black woman owned business. It's a family business. There's 5 of them, and they're just doing a phenomenal job. They have an awesome delivery operations plan, and their business plan really good, very thorough, very neighborhood based, and they too cater to patients, individuals that consume and use and taste and drink and everything to deal with many type of medical conditions. And then I have a team in Los Angeles. They're the cutest. This is like your hipsters, the more commercial cannabis, much less medical. It's one white guy, one black guy. We call them our ebony and our ivory. So Ian, he's South African, actually, really great kid, young man. And then the other guy, he's from the neighborhood, and he was the social equity candidate. And so they too have a grow license, and I mean, just some of the most beautiful plants that you've ever seen. They're growing indoors at a location in Los Angeles, and just doing a fantastic job. It's going to be a game changer for their families. They too are operating as a family business, and we were able to get them a really good investor. The other company from Long Beach, they had some of their own money, and Long Beach's technical assistance program was and assistance for social equity was much more robust. They actually had money that they got $500,000. In the city of LA, we didn't do that. So these guys, we were able to match them with the Korean investor that we work with. and they're doing really good. So it's going awesome. I can't complain.
Great. Hey, I got another question for you. What can people do if they think that they qualify for social equity? What do they do? How do they know? How do they find out? And then what do they do?
Well, one thing they can do is contact us at thegreenbelievers.com, or they can go to the City of Los Angeles Los Angeles City Department of Cannabis Regulation, and they can apply on the Acela portal. So it's automated, it's digital. You upload your information there, so they're going to want to know if you have a cannabis conviction, or if you live in a low-income area, or if you if you have low income status, or you live in an area that has high police arrest. So you provide documentation, you can upload your documents. The whole process might take 2 weeks at the most, maybe a little longer because we're in COVID. And then you can just be, the city would determine that you are eligible for a social equity special license. If you're non-social equity, you can go to the city's website and begin the application process for whatever is open. Right now, I only think they're taking what they call PCN, which means that you have to apply with your council office to get a special permit to apply for a license. So that's going to be for a little more well-heeled, well-funded groups for low income. You know, that's what you got left. So I hope that explains. If you go to DCR, you can call us and we can help you figure out how you qualify. You need a low income cannabis conviction, or where you live would qualify you for this. And then we have an assessment tool. I used to be a social worker. I used to work for the Department of Public Health many years ago. And so I was the assessment master. So I took my assessment tool and I modified it, and we're able to help people to figure out where they fit on the cannabis owner spectrum. And then that helps us to develop their plan. What should you do first? What should you do second? What should you do third? You know, so we can help you. This is one of the toughest businesses to be in. Cash flow management is one of the #1 burdens of a successful cannabis business today. Everyone's dealing with this, even the big boys, the commercial, the franchise style. They're all trying to figure out, you know, how do we manage cash every day? What can we put in the bank? What can we not put in the bank? We have strategies for that. Understanding your tax planning and those kind of issues are what's going to guide your corporate formation steps, you know. So those are some of the headaches. Managing that indoor growth, security and surveillance. Oh my God, I can't say enough about that. Our model in Los Angeles is not as fancy as some of the other places that you see, because our weed and cannabis business, it wasn't broken when we were legalized. All it was is it became legal. They were making plenty of money, and it was what it was. And so we didn't go and design all this fancy stuff. I think we'll have to grow into that later, but very minimalist designs, very minimalist inventory and how we set it up. And that's what keeps the cost. You know, you can break even in our business models. Those, I can't give out all the trade secrets, but yeah, that's how we're doing it. So everybody's, you know, they're managing, but it's super. The regulation is horrible. The fact that the city and the state don't speak the same language is very complicated. They're not decisive, and they don't embrace us. We're treated like we're always doing something wrong. So the licensing process doesn't embrace you and say, hey, welcome new cannabis business. How can we help you be successful in our licensing program? No, they're always looking for, what are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? What are you doing wrong? And so I think the culture over time, that would be one of my big things to try to change. We need to have a more cooperative culture. And lastly, Ian, I'd really like to see the cannabis influencers, which is why I'm here on your program today, to appeal to cannabis. And we need to consolidate our power. I think that there's so many of us out here running around doing things all over, and we're not going to get what we want. None of us are going to be able to compete with the corporate interests that are here. and that will be more visible and moving around amongst us unless we come together. So if you care about cannabis, if you care about mom and pop growers, if you care about the original indigenous cannabis farmers and what that means to them, if you worship and love the plant like we do and all of its cousins, then I think that we need to all figure out how to come together and start working together. Norml and LA Norml was the place for us to start first. They've got 50 years in the game, and we wanted to get on the wagon with them and to lend our social equity credibility. I'll just be honest, I told Ian, you ain't got nobody over there doing social equity. You need to just let me come in and help you with that. Yeah. So
hey, I'm the first one to admit that I am hardly ever the smartest guy in the room, but I am pretty good at picking out the smartest people in the room. And Cheryl, you know about social equity, and thanks for bringing this education to us today. So lastly, Cheryl, can you tell us tell our community where they can find you, the Green Believers, and your Everything You Need to Know About Cannabis podcast? How do we find you?
Yes, you can find us at thegreenbelievers.com, thegreenbelievers.com, or you can listen to us live on acceleratedradio.net, and I'll put that in the chat. And we're on every Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 p.m. live, and we send it out. We just had Ian on. Great show. So many people loved what we were talking about. Smoke the Vote is hot. They changed it to Smoke Dat Vote, D-A-T, because, you know, we so ebonic. Oh my God. So they've already made t-shirts in our crew. So, Smoke the Vote. I think it's going to be hot, and I'm just excited to be a part of this team. Thank you so much, Ian. We appreciate you, what you're doing. TheGreenBelievers.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, it's just great having you on the show today. Great. So, anything else from any of our other directors here? Have anything else to shout out? Bruce does. Can you unmute, Bruce? Hold on a sec, Bruce. You're on mute. Maybe you have to.
Hi.
There we go.
I want to thank you, ladies. You were fabulous. Tracy really spoke so well. Cheryl, you really put it all together for me to make it simple. And I appreciate your shout out to our 50 years of being down for the cause. And of course, Elisabeth, you're the greatest. We appreciate your energy and your education and your also the fact that you're very objective when you speak about these things. I appreciate that. That's all. And Ian, I'm thanking you guys. I can't help myself. It's such a thrill to see and hear where we've come. And we all need to go a lot further, especially when it comes to social equity. Sure, I want to talk about some of my ideas, which include tax breaks for people who have been in jail or prisons, okay, for openers. Just one idea that I'm thinking about. And other ways like that to cover everybody, a lot of people that suffer for these horrible laws. And I've experienced it myself, you know, as a lawyer for 50 years, how many people went fighting this situation. And it's been terrible. And whether you're black, brown, or white, and there's plenty of young white hippies that were busted for weed too in California, especially in LA. And I'm proud to say I've represented more hippies or anybody else in this area of practice. But the time has come to look at the big picture. So let's talk about that sometime. Okay, Cheryl?
I would love to, yes. Some of the white hippies are my best friends, so you're right.
Yeah, you got it.
I got in the business, Bruce. You gotta have a couple of good white hippies on your side, or you're not gonna make it in cannabis in California.
Hey, Bruce, I gotta throw the gratitude.
For example, I think you should get at least 50% tax deduction for anybody who's been in prison on a weed case openers, okay? Anybody who's been arrested, 25% tax reduction for having been arrested for marijuana, because you put it out, Cheryl, in ways that I've been talking about for 50 years, and that is, it's people who suffered emotionally, psychologically, and economically. And it's been a horrible, horrible 100 years in California, putting people away in prison and jails and threatening them all these years. What a farce. It's just such a farce. I've been going to, of course, I go to the courtroom, they all think I'm a big hero now. Before they were talking about putting these kids in jail. It's so messed up. Thank you, Cheryl, for your work.
Thank you, Bruce, for being there so that I could be here now. And I promise we won't let you down.
Absolutely.
Okay, well,
We're going to keep the movement going. Yes, sir.
We wouldn't be here without people like you.
Ian came to me and said, look, I want to do, I got some ideas for Norml, boy, I didn't realize how professional he could put things together. This is an example of it. And I got to tell you, the people he selected are over the top. And I'm proud. I'm very proud. I'm talking right now because I am a little high, admittedly. That's cool, right? But beyond that is that I really appreciate what I've heard from you ladies. And of course, Tracy, I've been following you for years, and I'm so happy for your energy and the positive things you had to say. And it's such a pleasure for me. And I want to know I'm still here for you. So anything I could do for you to help people put together and all that, I'm down. Okay.
Hey, Bruce, we gotta throw the gratitude. I know I'm speaking for everybody here. We gotta throw the gratitude right back at you, my friend. You created this wonderful vehicle for us to all be involved in. Like literally not one of us would be here without what you created and what you started. And we're just so honored to be carrying this mission forward that you've been carrying for 47 years. Amazing, truly.
Legend, my friend.
It's been nothing but a total benefit to my life. First of all, knowing the people that got busted and being turned on to the philosophical ways of their lives and smoking this good weed all the way along. And now walking to those courtrooms and they just, they want to say, everybody's got a comment. They can't help themselves, because they were so wrong. And they got to see all the wrongs we're still doing right now. It's horrible. A lot of improvements have to be done in the area of what's called justice. It's just us, J-U-S-T, us, U-S. That's the problem. It's not spelled right for those people. Anyway, I'll get off that. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful afternoon. And I'm glad we're recording this because I want to watch it again. You guys had a lot to talk about. It's so valuable. And I've been trying to put
and again, I'd like to remind you that Los Angeles Norml is entirely made up of volunteers from within our community who support the reform of cannabis laws. We're a nonprofit 501c3 organization, so please do consider supporting us financially by signing up to being a card-carrying member at LA Norml and clicking on the memberships under our community tab. As well, if you're a business within the community and you wish to become a valued mission partner to us at Los Angeles Norml, please click the partners link under our community tab, and we would be happy to support you back and promote your business as a proud supporter of Los Angeles Norml. And at the very minimum, please do come to lanorml.org and just sign up for our newsletter so that we can keep you informed about cannabis news as it relates to all of us here in Los Angeles. So as well, I'd like to remind you that we hold our monthly public meeting on the third Wednesday of every month. This was a weird month, so we did it on the fourth one. But our next show is going to be Wednesday, October 21st. And so please do come out. We'll be putting out more information about that show very shortly. And I'd just like to thank you all for coming to today's meeting and showing us your support for cannabis reform in Los Angeles and beyond. And a big shout out to our special guests today, Tracy, Ryan, and Cheryl Branch. Thank you.